Good afternoon. The purpose of today's press conference is to identify the individual who was shot and killed by police yesterday in Red Arrow Park. I want to make it clear from the beginning of this press conference that our purpose is not to demonize our suspect, but rather to identify him and through his death draw attention to an extraordinarily serious social health problem being played out on the streets of America's cities today, including Milwaukee. The decedent is a 31-year-old male by the name of Dontre Hamilton. He is from Milwaukee. Now, in the course of our investigation into his background, we have learned that this is not his first experience with the Milwaukee Police Department. As recently as last year, police were summoned to the scene where he had attempted to kill himself by stabbing himself in both sides of the neck and saying, "Voices told me to kill myself and you people too." An emergency detention was placed on him at that time. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and until recently, according to his grieving family, had been acting strangely. He also has an arrest history with his police department that in all likelihood is directly connected to his mental health issues. Among other events, he's been arrested for armed robbery and for disorderly conduct. The disorderly conduct incident began with him yelling profanities at the complainant, causing a crowd to gather. The complainant told police that Hamilton had recently broken all of her windows on her house in the past. He was written a citation by the police, warned not to return. He did and was subsequently arrested. Again, it's in all likelihood something directly attributable to the crisis he was enduring mentally. Now, this information is a significant concern to me and every member of the Milwaukee Police Department. Even as the investigation into the conduct of the officer continues, being conducted by the Wisconsin Department of Criminal Investigation, Milwaukee Police, the Milwaukee District Attorney's Office, and the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office, we must not lose sight of the fact that once again, a violent confrontation has occurred on the streets between a police officer and a violent, armed, combative, mentally ill individual. Combativeness appears to have been the cause of another officer-involved shooting, resulting in a death just last November. You may recall we had an individual in the transit center who was armed with a firearm, had attempted a carjacking, had fired at the person whom he tried to carjack. He was subsequently cornered by police, and when confronted, he advanced on the police, was ultimately shot, and was killed. We would learn later that he was also mentally ill and of great concern to his family. In fact, as we examined our own data, we found that in 2014, we've had 2 officer-involved fatal shootings. One of them, yesterday's, involved a combative mentally ill person. In 2013, there were 4 officer-involved shootings resulting in a death. 3 of those individuals were armed and had mental health issues. In 2012, there was 1 officer-involved fatal shooting. That was not mental health related. Recently, the New York Times did an article on the national problem. The headline was "Police Confront Rising Number of Mentally Ill Suspects." That was on April 1st, and in that article they said, in towns and cities across the United States, police officers find themselves playing dual roles as law enforcers and psychiatric social workers. County jails and state prisons have become de facto mental health institutions. The problem has gotten worse in recent years as state and local governments have cut back on mental health services for financial reasons. We are not immune to these trends. These trends, as a matter of fact, as recently as a month ago, resulted in the death of a police officer in upstate New York who was murdered with his own weapon by a mentally ill individual. Now, we're not demonizing the mentally ill. Their families suffer, they suffer. It's an extraordinarily social and public health problem. But our challenge is we are not doing enough for the mentally ill. Every year, this police department responds to over 7,000 calls involving mentally ill individuals. In 2013 alone, there were 9,600 calls to Milwaukee police of individuals who were in mental health crisis. That's 26 calls a day. In the first 4 months of 2014, we've had more than 3,100 calls for people in crisis. Since 2005, there have been over 50,000 emergency detentions brought by Milwaukee police to the mental health complex. Every year, families continue to suffer, individuals continue to suffer, and people are at risk because individuals cannot get the treatment they need to lead functioning lives. Now, we are not treatment providers. Even though, meeting the national standards set by the Memphis Police Department, we have 25% of our department trained in crisis intervention training, even though every member of the department undergoes training on how to handle and respond to issues concerning the mentally ill, we are a first response. We are not a solution to this problem. Now, I've been in policing over 4 decades, and over the course of that period of time, society embarked on a brave social experiment called deinstitutionalization, which resulted in thousands of mental health facilities being shuttered across the United States. But that was not done as a cost-saving measure. It was done with the expectation that community-based mental health services would be made available, and widely so. That has never happened. And in this last decade, as state, county, and city budgets have been slashed, the first, not last, victims of those cuts tend to be social services for the mentally ill. The police have become the social agency of first resort for the mentally ill and for the substance abusing. Every study of our homeless population, both here and across the nation, has indicated that a large percentage, a vast majority of our homeless population suffer from the dual diagnosis of some form of mental illness and substance abuse. Again, where's the treatment for them? The treatment apparently is call 911. Now, this is intolerable, and all levels of government need to get more deeply involved in this subset of the problem. Ironically, just as I was preparing to come in here, I received a press release. Governor Scott Walker's office has kicked off Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm gratified to see that this press release indicates there's been increased investments in mental health services. But I note, not as criticism, but as an important observation, that none of these investments seem to be going to the heart of the problem we're talking about today. We have violently mentally ill people whose violence is a direct result of their untreated mental illness. They are on the streets of our cities because there's no place else for them to go, and their families cannot control them. This is not an enormous population. It's a manageable population, but it is an unserved population. And what I would like to see this state do is be a leader in identifying the holes in the current system that can truly help us deal with people who are a risk to themselves, to their families, to the general public, and to our police officers. We have to do better. Much of the crime attributed to people in these circumstances has directly resulted in their fact that they have a severe mental illness. I think we can do a better job. The current circumstance is not working. We bring thousands of people to the mental health complex. They are basically evaluated and released. Now, I'm not playing a blame game with them. Everybody knows they're under-resourced. But we've got to do a better job, and the current standard of being an imminent risk to themselves and others isn't cutting it. And leaving them to their own devices puts their lives at risk, as well as the lives of others. Hopefully we can do a better job. It's my hope that we don't have any more of these encounters, but sadly the experience of the last few years here in Milwaukee, as well as in other American cities, indicates otherwise. This problem is growing, as the resources quite simply don't exist to serve the population. Now, I'm willing to answer some questions about this. There are still things I can't say about the investigation as that continues, but I do want to make sure that we do not lose this important opportunity to recognize that what's happening here is part of a national problem. And our governmental officials can no longer be allowed to ignore it in the name of saving money or lowering taxes. This is not a tax and spend issue. We have a moral obligation to the mentally ill. And if we are unable or unwilling to meet our moral obligation, then we have a responsibility from a public safety point of view to, at the very least, protect the lives of those individuals who come in contact with people in these situations, including our police officers.